we're making another stop in the old Rockport neighborhood on the stroll through historic buildings in Rockport. This is the Joe A. Harper and Bertha Harper House. It was named a recorded Texas historic landmark in 2012. The house is best known as the home of Aransas County Judge Joe A. Harper and his new bride, Miss Bertha Ertling Harper. They lived here 8 short years before he died suddenly in 1928. Bertha was born in 1888 and died in 1978. Joe Harper was born in 1881 and died, as I said, in 1928. The judge was a major force in bringing the first highway to Aransas County that linked it with other coastal areas. The highway and a causeway across Copano Bay opened up tourism and development here. He suggested the name Hug the Coast Highway. Miss Bertha was a teacher for 35 years and known to generations of local families. She was also a faithful Sunday school teacher for children at First Baptist Church. She and her family lived together in the Harper House another 49 years, make that 45 years, after Judge Harper's death. This house is a colonial revival style built around 1910. It has withstood the force of several major hurricanes for 110 years. During the 1919 storm, over 50 people took refuge in the second floor of the house. World War I brought a boom to Rockport, and the Heldenfels brothers established a shipyard to build boats under a government contract. Joe Harper came to town in 1918 from Houston to work for the government in the shipyard. In just 2 short years, he became judge of Aransas County in the first of the 4 terms, met and married Miss Bertha Ertling, and purchased this house. For those 2 years, Rockport was crowded with shipyard workers. Around 900 persons were employed by the shipyard. Even the old bank building was converted into a hotel to house them. This house was used as a rooming house in 1919. The memoirs of Irene Norval in this book give a gripping first-hand account of riding out the storm on the second floor with 50 other people. She writes, "It was entirely occupied by men who worked at the shipyard and took their meals elsewhere. They gave up their beds for the children. Her son-in-law, Ford Jackson, lived nearby at 801 North Magnolia. The area often flooded. It was at sea level. But imagine water surging up here to this neighborhood and then filling up the street down that way. As they came to this corner, the family was ready to go down to the schoolhouse, which was a big 2-story building that they thought would be safe. A man on horseback came riding up and said, 'Don't go there, turn back. The walls are collapsing at the schoolhouse.' So they came up this street, which is more of a hill, to the Ertling house, which was in the old boarding house, I think, owned by the Jamesons. And they were okay. Only once during the night did the water get up into the house. Can you imagine? It was high enough surge where I'm standing. See how the house has a porch? It went to the first floor of this house during the night, during the peak of the storm surge. The next day, the waters had receded, and Irene Norval says they walked home on dry ground. Let's talk about Bertha, Miss Bertha. She was the daughter of William Ertling, a Civil War veteran who's buried in Rockport Cemetery with most of the family. Her mother was Melinda Ertling, who was a charter member of the First Baptist Church. Miss Bertha was a teacher in Rockport schools for 35 years until she retired in 1953. John Freeman remembers her as his third grade teacher in his book, and this one is fun to read, A Childhood by the Sea by John Freeman. This one's a little harder to find now. It wasn't as big an imprint. He talks a lot about this neighborhood because right over there is the house he grew up in. And so he talks about Miss Bertha, and there's a page in here where he describes what it was like to have her as a teacher. A changeless person with the same hairdo day after day and a constant demeanor. Never do I remember her raising her voice nor scolding a student, neither was she overbearing. And I love this part. I call it driving Miss Daisy. Every day after school, Miss Bertha and her 4 siblings, 5 of them, would climb into a 1939 Dodge sedan and they would go for a drive around town. So this is World War II, and they had gas rationing. They would go as far as their ration coupons would take them around town. Very slow. Imagine the 5 of them every day taking a slow drive around Rockport, and I'm sure they would stop and say hello to friends. The house stayed in Miss Bertha's family for another 49 years until she gave it to her friends and neighbors, the Haynes family, in 1972. Their daughter, Thelda Haynes Poe, was a good friend of Miss Bertha when she was a little girl. Next came Gary and Cynthia Anderson, I'd like to mention, from 1979 to 1988. They added lots to the property and did some interior remodeling during the 9 years that they owned the house. The current owner is Sue Travis, a public school teacher interested in local history